Hi there. Well, today I'm going to continue my short series of videos on doing some off-centre and eccentric turning. And today I've borrowed a Axminster Eccentric Chuck, which comes with very limited instructions, but apparently there's a video which I've not seen. Typical, don't bother with instructions. And it seems that you grip this part on the chuck with the chuck jaws expanding out, that the eccentricity element is provided by adjustments on these screw holes, and this is a faceplate, so you screw the faceplate, this part of the faceplate, to the wood and then reassemble it, fiddly as anything, and then you do the eccentric bit by rotating it here. So here goes. We'll see if we can do some sort of eccentric bowl rather than a goblet. So first off, I've removed the fixing screws, which has freed that off, and then it looks as if I've got to actually take this piece apart in order to get to the faceplate. Right, okay, there's the faceplate element. So now I need to fix a piece of wood onto that. So I've got a bit of cherry here, which I've marked up with the centres. So first thing, screw this on. I don't really know what this peg's for, apart from a locating peg. It must have some significance, but I don't quite know what it is. And there's some marks around the outside too. I'll set that up so number one is on number one. I might have to read the instructions. Well, that didn't work. I've got to take that off in order to be able to fix the plate on. Doesn't seem to be very user friendly. So that's got to come off. And I've got to fix this on with the screws that way. Okay. So obviously to start with, it's got to be fixed with no eccentricity in order to turn the outside to some sort of sensible shape. Right, so this will now mount onto the chuck in expansion mode, in theory. Not so good so far. Right, I just realised this is kind of like a back to front problem. Normally I'd turn a tenon and do the outside of the tenon and then fit it in, then hollow out the bowl. Because I've got the faceplate on here, which is not the way I normally would do it, I don't normally use faceplates. This obviously would have been the inside ordinarily because that's where the screws are. But I want to turn the inside of the bowl to have an eccentric part to it. This has got to be the inside. So I'm going to have to waste a chunk at the bottom, shape the outside, and leave it all on the faceplate, all in one direction. Back to front to what I would normally do, but I think I've worked it out.
Just cutting a large tenon or foot at the bottom to allow the room for the screws, so that I've got a waste area marked out ready. And now start shaping the outside of the bowl using a 3/8 bowl gouge. At this stage I fancied leaving a bit of the bark on as a bit of a detail, and I'm also here just cutting it back so there's a little band that I can do a bit of texturing on, and so try to retain a bit of the bark. That doesn't quite work out though, the bark does actually have to come off in a minute. So when finessing it with the scraper, a bit of the bark plucked out, so I decided I'd just recut it. So I went back round it and took out the bark and then just finished the surface off. The cherry finishes off beautifully with a very light touch from the shape and scraper. And now I want to put a bit of texture onto the raised band with the Crown Mini texturing tool, just to put a bit of a crisscrossy pattern across there to hold a bit of wax, perhaps later on, or a bit of gold, not sure at this stage. and then just dress up the edges with a scraper to give half a millimetre of clear line on the edge of the rim, just to give a bit of definition to the edge of the texturing. After some sanding, going through the grits up to 400 with a bowl sander and regular sandpaper, putting some cellulose sanding sealer on now, as the outside will be pretty well finished, and I shouldn't be coming back to that apart from maybe some colouring or some wax in that texturing. It's coming up nice. And then burnish with a bit of Yorkshire grit, and that's all polished off, and then some Hampshire sheen as the first coat of wax.
Right, what I've done is on the chuck there's a scribe line and some marks on the outside, so I've just marked number 1, which is where it was positioned to start with.
So having disassembled the chuck, you can get to the locking screws and slackening off the one with the adjustable top. So I first off set the chuck up with the eccentricity turned by 3 positions on the indexing screws out of 5, 3 out of 5, and then started to try to see what I could do with it. I actually changed my mind fairly quickly, but at this point I'm marking it up so I know where the register is, where point number 1 relative to that index pin is.
Right, that's wobbly. Right, I didn't like the way that was going. I'm not sure I fully understand how this is supposed to work at the moment. So I'm going to increase the eccentricity and see if that does anything I like. Okay, so I have now increased the eccentricity to the maximum, and I've marked on a circle 80mm in diameter.
So now I've just got to hollow out the 80mm bowl, which I'm going to make 40mm deep, so it's a hemisphere. So start off with a spindle gouge and then swap over to a bowl gouge, and just normal process of hollowing out a small bowl. And then as I get near the final profile using the cardboard template, I switch to the negative rake scraper to take out the last millimetre or so and get a nice smooth finish inside.
spot on. Bit of sanding now.
Time for a quick power sand up through the grits. Then finish the bowl off completely with cellulose sanding sealer, bit of Yorkshire grit to smooth it down after that, and then some Hampshire sheen wax. I wasn't quite sure how this was going to go, so at this point I've decided that that's the end of the off-centre on this piece, and I'm now going to set it up straight again and do some decorative beading on the top face of the bowl. So I'm just disassembling the chuck and reassembling it so that it is concentric. When I started it up, I used the small bead cutting tool and cut some beads. Unfortunately, I forgot to film it, so you can just see me now dressing the final finish. You turn this with the bevel facing downwards and just gently rock it in to each of the beads as you go, and with luck you don't get any tear out and you get a nicely shaped bead. A bit of hand turning just to clear any of the fluff out the bottom of those beads and coves, and then a bit of sanding, and then cellulose sanding sealer and some wax on the surface. It needs a bit of a brushing in because the paper towel gets snagged, and every now and again I will clear it out with an old toothbrush in case there's any clag that gets in the bottom of the beads. That's been polished up, and I'm now going to get some of the Hampshire Sheen Electric Blue embellishing wax and put that into the texture to highlight it. And I'm going to let that set and burnish it off a bit later on. If the blue wax has spread over onto the clean area, then I'm cleaning it off by hand and using some of the clear wax as a solvent just to wipe it off, because you just want that blue embellishment in the texturing. You don't want it over the rest of the wood.
I think that'll do. Right, I'll reverse chuck it now and turn off the bottom.
So I'm leaving the centre up as long as possible because with the reversing jaws they're not as stable as you'd like. I'm only turning at about 700 RPM. Now I don't know how deep those screw holes are going at this point, but I'm thinking I'm going to have to do quite a deep scoop out in the centre to get rid of those screws. So I think I'm going to make a bit of a feature of it. So I am progressively scooping out the centre, and I've decided to leave a little sort of upside down finial in the middle. And also to repeat the beading detail on the top with some beads in the bottom, on the foot and also in the base. So with 3 beads nicely cut in the base, I'm just checking that the finial that's in the bottom is not sitting proud, and then just tidy it up with the 1/4 inch spindle gouge just to get a neat little shape. Then sanded and cellulose sanding sealer and more Hampshire sheen wax to finish it off. And then a little bit of attention to detail around the edge of the rim there, where bits of the blue wax had crept over into the corner. So just a lolly stick split in half, used as a little gouge to clean the wax out.
There we have it. Unusual little bottom. Off centre bowl. With a bit of colouring and texturing. And a bit of detail at the bottom.
Then a quick buff on the buffing wheel system with a bit of Canuba just to make that shine pop.